If you enjoy this podcast, look out for my new book, Mondo Documentary. It collects short essays on hundreds of documentary films. Judd Apatow says it's required reading for anyone who loves nonfiction cinema. It's not on Amazon, but you can order it anywhere in the world from purenonfiction.net. On this episode, I highlight 4 new documentaries coming out this fall and conversations with the filmmakers recorded live in Los Angeles. I'm Tom Powers, and this is Pure Nonfiction. Last week, we partnered with our friends at The Ankler for a new edition of Documentary Spotlight, taped before a live audience in the Hollywood Hills. We're going to hear from the filmmakers behind 4 titles: Come See Me in the Good Light, about a rock star poet; The Age of Disclosure, about a government cover-up of UFOs; The Perfect Neighbor, about a murder in Florida; and wrapping up with The Alabama Solution, about whistleblowers inside a prison. We start with Come See Me in the Good Light. It's a poignant and surprisingly funny love story about the writers Andrea Gibson and Megan Falley. Andrea had a breakout success in the world of spoken word poetry, performing to sold-out audiences and becoming a non-binary icon. The film shows how Andrea faces a terminal diagnosis of cancer, with wit, joy, and a deeply loving relationship with their partner Megan. The film team is led by director Ryan White and producer Jessica Hargrave. They've previously collaborated on multiple projects, including Ask Dr. Ruth, Goodnight Oppie, and Pamela, A Love Story. On this film, Ryan and Jessica went into production with a lean team, including cinematographer Brandon Somerhalder and sound person Dave Richards. Come See Me in the Good Light premiered at Sundance and was acquired by Apple TV, where it begins streaming on November 14th. Here's my talk with producer Jessica Hargrave.
So, Jessica, I understand this project came to you from Tig Notaro, who serves as an executive producer on it. Can you tell me how that came about?
Yeah, thanks everybody for being here, by the way. I've known Tig for a long time, and as you mentioned, my partner Ryan White and I have been making films together for a long time, and we believe in an expansive version of documentary. We want documentaries to be all things, including really funny. And so we always said to Tig, bring us a funny topic. We want to make something funny. And then Tig called and said, my poet friend has a cancer diagnosis, and I think that this is the film for you. And I was like, Tig, honestly, she still makes fun of that phone call because she could tell I was only sort of paying attention because I was like, I just don't know if that's it, you know? And I haven't read a poem since high school, so I was also like, that's just not for me. And she said, give them a shot, you know, give them a shot. This is the rock star of poetry. And I said, okay. And then I watched some performance, and it really was more than I expected, more than what I understood poetry to be, which I've since learned. And then I listened to an interview with Andrea, and a couple weeks later, we were on a plane. We didn't even Zoom with them. There was no, like, let's test this out over the phone. It was just like we showed up in their driveway and started making it.
So, Andrea really was a icon of this world of spoken word poetry. They would sell out theaters like a music act would. It was also a revelation to me. So you and Ryan you worked on some pretty big projects, series, and Goodnight Oppie, full of special effects. How was this different than what you've been doing in recent years?
It was honestly a return to our roots, which we just loved. Like, we've been best friends since we were little kids in Atlanta, Georgia, and we're both 44, so it's been 34 years of friendship. And we've been making films for a long time. And I'm grateful to have been able to have some bigger budgets, some bigger teams, but where we started was we do everything. And so this really felt like it was back to that. We had to we were fortunate to find some people who were willing to invest in the film, and that's how we got started. But it was like, you can't overspend, of course. You don't know where this is going. You don't know if anyone's ever going to buy it. You just know you want to make it. And that's that root that you just love the film and you just want to do it. And so we kept a really small team. You know, we would hire, and we also, because of the sensitivity of the subject matter, kept the same team. So each time it would just be us, Ryan and I, and then we had a sound person and a camera person, and we would do all the things. I would download the footage at night, you know, and then we would shoot again the next day, and then I'd deal with it back at the office. So it was really just a labor of intense love and desire that makes you want to keep doing it every single day, and I loved it.
I mean, we can see in the trailer the incredible intimacy in the film. You're really living with Andrea and Meg. What was that like to have your crew of 4 people? You already outnumber them as 2 in the house.
Thankfully, like, they are very open. They were very much unicorn subjects. They didn't take a lot of warming up, and so they were fine with us having us in the house. They joked about having not had men in their house in forever, and so that was one thing that took some getting used to. But they absolutely adored our team, and so we all became sort of a part of the family. Meg and Andrea had gone through this experience where every 3 weeks, essentially, they would get results of a cancer marker test, and they started to dread those 3 weeks. And then we started timing our visits mostly around those results. And so they said they came to look forward to them because they said it was like, my friends are coming to visit. So Brandon Summerhalder, our DP, would often be the 3rd person in the room with the doctor, and they welcomed that. And when he wasn't around at times, because whatever, we weren't exactly every 3 weeks, then they missed him. And so it really became like a fabric of the experience for them.
So during all this time, Andrea kind of doesn't know 3 weeks to 3 weeks, what her health status is. They do know that it's a finite amount of time that they have, no matter what. How were you thinking about, building a film around this?
It's interesting because it's true. I didn't know that this is what it would look like. And so every 3 weeks you get this answer for this particular type of ovarian cancer. And I'm sure there's some other cancers that are similar. And so every 3 weeks, like you said, they would go in and they wouldn't know. And sometimes they'd get good news, sometimes they'd get bad news. And when they got good news, Andrea would say, I've got these 3 weeks. Like, I don't know what's coming after that, but right now I've got a good 3 weeks. And then the next time we wouldn't know what it would look like. We also knew as an audience, you probably aren't going to sit through that many ups and downs. So the goal was really, we didn't know that necessarily at the beginning, but as we started the edit, which was pretty soon thereafter, with our brilliant editor, Bernice Chavez, she started working on it, and we realized that we only needed a couple of those for you to get an idea of this roller coaster of the experience. And I know, like, probably everyone in this room has been through some version of this experience, so you all know those ups and those downs. And so we also knew that people would understand it. People would relate to that feeling, even if it didn't look exactly this way with those tests every 3 weeks and whatever your experience might have been.
So for people who haven't seen the film, can you describe Andrea and what their personality is like?
They are, if you know who Tig Notaro is, then that's one way to just think of them. Like, it's like this very dry, hilarious personality. But they also are, I have never been around someone who says such beautiful things so casually. Like, there's a scene in the movie where this was the first night, they're cutting vegetables, and they're talking about how they don't really have, they haven't had an appetite since they've been on chemo. And they're just cutting away, and they said, but I'd live the rest of my life without taste buds if I could live the rest of my life. And I was just like, me too, and so I just started wanting to have a little stack of Post-it notes to write everything down to try to remind myself in the mornings, or remind myself how lucky I am to have a body. That's one of the things they talk about.
Well, you had a camera.
This is true.
Got it covered.
But we did have that, but I still wanted my Post-it notes, Tom, to reference. But they're just magnetic. I think that there's something about them that was very unique. They're very funny, but they're also very thoughtful, and they're also very kind, and they love connecting with people. So they broke the fourth wall every shoot, every single time. We're like, well, this is just part of the movie now.
So Andrea is half the film. The other half is their partner, Meg. Can you talk about her qualities going through this?
Yeah. So back to my previous self, when I found out about this project, and I found out about Meg, I was like, "What's worse than one poet?" Like, I'm like, "My God, like, how are we going to make a movie like this?" And then I met Meg, same thing, and I joke with her about that. She likes that joke, so it's okay. But she is very similar in terms of her magnetism and the way that she speaks so beautifully about such harsh things and such joyous things. She speaks so well about everything and always has a great perspective. But they're also very different. Meg doesn't worry, which actually is very helpful but also interesting when you're dealing with the cancer diagnosis. Like, she just sort of takes each day as it comes. Andrea was much more thinking towards the future, also sort of carried grief and worry more heavily than Meg did, and Meg was a lot more lighter in the sense that she said, I don't know what's going to happen and I'm not going to pretend to, so I'm just going to take today as it comes. And it was a very different, it actually worked really well for both of them to kind of have that balance to each other.
So the structure that the film does find is working towards this live event. It's going to be 2 days of performances that Andrea gives at in Colorado, where they live, at Paramount Theater. What was it like building up to that and then to film that event?
That was an incredible experience. So they had they'd had a first round of cancer and then a recurrence, and after the recurrence had to cancel a tour, and so had not been able to perform. And they, as you saw briefly in the trailer, Meg says that Andrea looks as poetry as what can I give. Like, they love connecting with the audience. So as much as writing poems and publishing books was meaningful to them, it didn't feel anywhere near what it felt like to be able to look people in the eye and talk to them. So they were so sad to think that they might not be able to do it again. And then there was this sort of, in that roller coaster of health, this moment of a peak where they were doing really well and they thought that they could potentially do the show and decided to do it. And that's also a joke in the trailer that they say, if I'm not there, then I'm not going to feel bad. We can go ahead and book it, with the hopes that I will be alive. And they very much were. Shooting it was, the small intimate team was kind of out the window a bit on that, because we wanted to really do it well. We realized we only had that one shot, so we had 6 cameras. We brought in somebody who could help us with the technical support to make sure we got it all. But technical, aspect aside, it was so emotional. Like, I was just so excited that they were able to do this that they had wanted to do for so long, and to see them do so well, and to see the audience connect with them. I'm wearing it now. Megan wears a necklace that says Andrea on it, and for that show there were so many people working on it. I bought everybody a necklace that says Andrea on it, so because they were also really nervous, and so when they showed up at the theater, like the stagehand guy, like everybody, I gave them to everybody, and Andrea was like, what is that? And then, like, slowly throughout, like the box office manager, like everybody was wearing the necklace, because I just wanted them to know that, like, we're all rooting for you and we're all standing here with you.
That's a good producer. So for my last question, you finished the film in time for Andrea to see it and be at the Sundance Film Festival and go to other screenings. They did pass away this summer. How have you been processing that?
The honest answer is I'm still in a bit of disbelief. I asked Ryan the other day. He feels the same. I don't know how to process it. Like, in all honesty, I love seeing their face on the screen. I love Megan. I sat with her and held her hand the first time she watched the movie since Andrea passed, which was a really incredible experience. And Meg said she just, like, wanted to reach into the screen, and, like, pull Andrea out, and she wanted to go back into this world in which Andrea was still with her. And I feel similarly, but there's a part of me that almost feels like I still can. Meg made a joke recently that Andrea died allegedly because Meg likes to believe that Andrea is still here with all of us. And so I'm choosing to take that path a bit too, that Andrea is sitting out there with all of you right now.
Well, there's certainly very present in this film. It's going to be on Apple next month. Thank you very much to Jessica Hargrave.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here.
next film explores the gray area between science fiction and the factual. The Age of Disclosure presents testimonies on what we once called UFOs. Now the official acronym is UAP, for Unidentified Anomalous Phenomenon. Filmmaker Dan Farah spent 3 years interviewing dozens of U.S. government insiders about material that's been kept secret for 80 years. The film premiered at South by Southwest, and its trailer has views in the tens of millions. Here's our conversation.
So, Dan, what got you started on this exploration of UAP?
Well, look, I'm 45 years old, so my childhood was the 80s and early 90s. And like a lot of people, I grew up on Steven Spielberg movies like Close Encounters and E.T. and watched X-Files throughout its original run. And, growing up with pop culture like that, it just made me curious about this topic and these big questions like, are we alone in the universe? Does the U.S. government know more about this topic than the public does, which has always been a hallmark.
I also watched those films, but I didn't dedicate 3 years of my life to going to interview.
There you go. No, look, it's just been a lifelong interest over the years. Read every book on the topic, watched every doc on the topic. I always wished that a film existed, a documentary existed, that only interviewed people who have direct knowledge of this topic as a result of working for the U.S. government. And so it didn't exist, so I decided I was going to make it.
So how did you get some of these people to start opening up? I mean, a theme of this film, their interviews, is ways in which at different times you could really be shunned for talking about this, or there was all kinds of different pressures to not talk about this. How did you crack that open?
So about 3.5, 4 years ago, I met the first couple interview subjects. They were intelligence officials who worked this topic for the U.S. government. As I formed relationships with them and started to learn the realities of it, started to learn that there really is a there. It's a super serious situation. It's not a sensational, or cool situation. It's a very serious national security situation. And when I started socializing how I wanted to make a documentary that showcased that had people talk very soberly and serious about it, they started to socialize that. I started to get passed up the ladder a little bit, started put with senators on both sides of the aisle, White House National Security Council members. And as I socialized what I was trying to do, I realized it lined up with something they were looking for, which was an opportunity to bring the truth out in a safe, conservative way. No one wanted to go out on their own on CNN or Fox and be the one guy out on a limb saying something extraordinary. Because of the cultural stigma, no one wanted that backlash. But the idea of being arm in arm with dozens of other people in a very, safe situation. I was saying I was going to do this independently. I wasn't going to set it up at a big studio or network. I was going to keep control over it. I was only going to include people who actually do have direct knowledge of the topic. There would be no exception. And it became a way for these people to bring the truth out. A lot of senior intelligence officials, military officials, government officials who are aware of the truth, they go home to their families like everyone else, to their kids and their wives, and they fall asleep with the weight of this on their shoulders. And a lot of them wanted an opportunity to bring out the truth. And this kind of became the right moment in time.
So as you were seeking visuals for this, what were you able to obtain, and what were the things that you wanted to but felt out of your reach?
Visuals, I felt very strongly about only using videos of UAP, formerly called UFOs, that were indisputably real. And so I vetted every video that we got access to. I vetted it through various sources, the Senate Intelligence Committee, the Senate Armed Services Committee, the Pentagon's UAP program. Just made sure every single person who was in the know actually confirmed those videos are real. Early on, I think a turning point for support for the film was, Secretary Rubio, when I started the film, was a senator, and he was the vice chairman of the Senate Intel Committee. He very much wanted to see the truth brought out on this. So when he got on board early on, he had the Senate Intelligence Committee give me a completely unprecedented support. I would go to them with interview subject names, make sure that they were credible, that they really had the direct knowledge they claimed to have. They brought people to me. They were there to help guide me and fill in blanks anywhere where I was trying to piece together this complicated lay of the land. So the access that I got from the Senate Intelligence Committee and then the Senate Armed Services Committee was really amazing and helped make it all possible.
So, I mean, you reference Mark Rubio. Does attitudes towards this change along partisan lines?
No, that was one of the most surprising things early on, is that it's legitimately the most bipartisan issue of our time. Like, I interviewed Senator Gillibrand from New
Finally,
York.
something to bring us together.
Yeah, I mean, at a time where we can't agree on anything, Democrats and Republicans, they were completely aligned. I literally interviewed Senator Gillibrand from New York back to back with Senator Rubio, and they both joked in front of me that this was the only thing they agreed about. And then they asked me to take a walk and told me I was making the most important film that's ever been made. Like, seriously. And they both think it's extremely important. The other thing that's important about this topic is it ends up shining a light on really systemic issues within the government that have nothing to do with UAP and non-human intelligence, like lack of oversight, lack of congressional oversight on spending on classified projects. So you have really misplaced power in the hands of defense contractors who are doing things with taxpayer money, but the congressional overseers have no idea what they're doing. So it's like a major systemic issue that there's a clip in the movie. I use a clip of Eisenhower's farewell speech from 1961 where he famously warns of the growing power of the military-industrial complex and how if it's not kept in check, it could lead to extreme misplaced power that would sort of like undermine our democratic ways. And that's exactly what's happening. So whether whether that's an issue that you end up dealing with because of the UAP and non-human intelligent life issue or not, it's an issue that needs to be dealt with. And I think that it's one of the unexpected, interesting things about this film is how it shines a light on how dysfunctional our government is, how a cover-up like this can actually persist over 80 years because of how dysfunctional the government is.
In prepping for this interview, I was doing a little research and realized there'd been a congressional motion about this just a month ago that in the crazy news cycle had totally passed me by. What is the latest of push from inside the government to try to be more transparent around this?
Yeah. So it speaks to the bipartisan nature of this. Senator Schumer, Senator Gillibrand, both Democrats from New York, and Senator Rounds from South Dakota, Republican, have joined forces on a bipartisan piece of legislation called the UAP Disclosure Act, which they're actively fighting for right now. The goal is to have it signed into law by the end of the year, and they're lobbying pretty hard for it. In fact, they're using my film to help rally support behind the scenes within Congress. Been doing secret screenings. That legislation, you can find it online. It's mind-blowing to read. They use the word non-human intelligence dozens of times. They use the term technology of non-human origin dozens of times. Schumer put out a statement saying the American people have the right to know about non-human intelligence and technology of unknown origin. He put out another statement saying that the U.S. government has kept what it knows about this away from the public for decades, and that is wrong. And this is an exact quote. He says, "and that breeds mistrust." So that's what's happening with it, and it's wild to see guys like Rounds and Schumer, who have absolutely nothing in common and are completely ideologically opposed, line up on this and say it's important.
So, along the way of making this, I'm sure you faced skeptics, and how has that been for you to be working in an area that that consistently raises skepticism?
I think it just makes it more interesting because I had skepticism too. I was like, is this all just the stuff of science fiction movies and TV shows and all the stuff I grew up with, or is there, they're there? And you really quickly get to the fact that there's a real situation. And so I enjoy talking to people who are skeptical about it because I tell them some of the things I've learned, and they're like, wait, because the fact that advanced technology that we can't identify is in our airspace and in our most sensitive critical airspace, like nuclear weapons sites or military bases, classified bases.
Sounds bad.
Yeah. So no matter what it is, it's bad, right? So once you just get to that point, you're like, okay, so if it's not this, and then your alternative is it's China or it's Russia, that's pretty bad too. So you quickly get to these like sobering realities of, okay, this is a real situation. It's not great. And the more you hear it from senior people within the government system on both sides of the aisle, the more real it gets. Like for example, one of the interview subjects I got very close with is the head of aviation security on Obama's White House National Security Council. He was literally on the National Security Council for the entire Obama administration. He's the head of aviation security. Before that, he was the head of intelligence at the FAA. And he says like it keeps him up at least 3-4 nights a week, talking about how we have absolutely no control of our airspace.
I will say one of the unintended things about watching this film, these 34 government officials, is you realize what a bunch of white old men operate in these circles.
More systemic problems.
As maybe some transparency opens up, what are the things, like what are the top questions you have? What what are the walls you've hit in this research where you feel like something is in the files there, and that's what you would like to know about for a sequel to your film?
I just think once laws like the UAP Disclosure Act pass, it'll be really fascinating to see what change it brings about. Like many of the changes Schumer and Rounds and Gillibrand are fighting for are things like a White House appointed committee that will create a system for quickly declassifying information that could be declassified to sort of like get past the logjam of the overclassification process. There's other really interesting elements of the Disclosure Act that I'm sure will lead to a lot of debates if they get passed. Like there's an eminent domain clause in there that says the U.S. government can take control of any technology of non-human origin that a private company, like a defense contractor, might have in their possession. So like you get into this like super interesting debate type area of, is that the right thing or the wrong thing to do? Is that a slippery slope? Does that give the government ability to grab any technology in the future that they want? The stuff I'm most interested in is like where it all goes once a law like this gets passed. What ultimately does still get declassified or what gets kept classified? What happens with the eminent domain language? Yeah.
So in the minute we have left, I'm interested to know, how has this project changed you?
I think it's made me realize that despite all the differences people have, we all have a lot more common in that, we are, if I take away what I think you all will when you watch the movie, that we're not alone in the universe, the idea that, the human race is a special thing, but also surrounded by a lot of other intelligent life, and it makes us all, I think, quickly realize more what we have in common than what we have, than the differences we have.
The film's coming out in November?
November 21st, we're going to open theatrically in New York, LA, and DC, and worldwide on Prime Video, all on the same day, November 21st.
The Age of Disclosure. Look out for it. Thank you, Dan Farah.
Cool.
Our third film, The Perfect Neighbor, looks at a shooting in Ocala, Florida that has tragic echoes of other killings. The whole film is constructed with police body cameras and other surveillance footage. We see how police had frequently responded to incidents involving a volatile woman named Susan Lorenz. She's white and had a history of clashing with her black neighbors. Ultimately, Susan shot and killed her neighbor, Ajika Owens, known as AJ, the mother of 4. Susan's defense was rooted in the stand your ground laws that are memorable from the case of Trayvon Martin. The film won the directing award at Sundance, where it was acquired by Netflix. I was joined by the producer, Alisa Payne. Her prior credits include Stamped from the Beginning and Katrina, Come Hell or High Water. She worked closely on The Perfect Neighbor with director Geeta Gambhir. They are co-founders, along with Sam Pollard, of the company Message Pictures. Here's my talk with Alisa taking place only a few hours before the film went public on Netflix.
The killing of A.J. Owens had a very personal connection to the director Geeta Ghanbir. Can you explain that connection?
Sure. So Geeta, our director, and our other producer, Nakan Kwantu, are life partners. They're married. And Ajika was the best friend of his cousin. And so in 2 days, a day after this happened, we got a call saying that they wanted help to activism. I'm so nervous. I don't know why. I'm sad.
Me, Alisa.
I know. I've sat across from you so many times. Maybe it's because
the lights.
Yes, maybe because it's coming out tomorrow. I don't know why, but yeah. And so they got the call, and initially they were trying to galvanize. We were trying to get media attention on there because Susan, who killed Ajika, did not get arrested. She was detained for 4 days, but she was allowed to walk around, et cetera. And so we just wanted to get...
And you knew from past experiences in these situations that it often doesn't...
Exactly.
Trayvon
Martin is the most popular and most known case.
Also in Florida.
Also in Florida. And Ocala is the place where this Stand Your Ground actually started, where it was penned. And so after she wasn't arrested for 4 days, we just needed to ramp up all the media attention, and we sent all the clips out.
And then when did you know that this could be more than just activism, but a work of cinema?
So 2 months in, the attorneys for the family requested the footage from the body cam. And when we saw it, it was like, wait, what is this? This is playing like a horror film. It came in this jumble, and it wasn't organized. But what we can see is both this wonderful community of people, right, a multi-diverse community, and then this one dangerous outlier that was threatening children and practicing harm speech and all the things. And so we're like, wait, we could make this a horror because it was a horror for the community.
And did you go through cycles of thinking about the structure of it? I mean, as we see, it's largely composed of body cam footage. You could have gone and interviewed people afterwards or done any number of different approaches. How did you arrive at where you did?
Well, when we were first on the ground, we were interviewing people. But after we saw the footage, we were like, this could be it. And Geeta always jokes that Viri, our editor, was the one who trusted it the most, because people would make comments after they see early cuts, and she'll saying like, we don't see the victim often enough, and we should have some background on her. And Viri's like, you all have to trust it. Trust it. And so we trusted it. It's really interesting. I always say, we never fussed, Tom. There was never disagreements. However, just everything.
You tell the story you want to tell.
It's just, it's just always we have different thoughts on how to do things. And so I am happy that when you see it, if you haven't seen it, that I won on the open.
Can you talk about the qualities that Geeta brings to this?
Sure.
Many people would know her work both as a director and as an editor. Yeah. Her very first film is in the book Mondo documentary. I played it at the Toronto Film Festival. But yes, working so closely alongside her, not only on this film, but you and Geeta and Sam Pollard have a company together. What are the qualities that she brings?
So Geeta, as you said, was once an editor. On this, she was our first AE. Geeta was the one who, it was very difficult. So the police, though they gave the footage very early, especially for Florida, we were thinking that it would be much later. We got it almost instantaneously. It came in a jumble, and so there was no dates on it initially. There was no names on it. It had, the camera is so, it's just one camera that's not really high tech. It's mono stereo. They have police officers have all the things on their body, and so Geeta was really instrumental in stringing it out and trying to put it in order. And because of her editing background, she was able to lay it out and try to get, there was all the thoughts about whether it should be chronological or not, but she was able to piece that together and then hand it to, by far one of the best editors. I have a girl crush on her, Diana Lieberman. We are so proud of her and what she did on this.
You've worked on a lot of different films that look at injustice to Black Americans in different ways. Where does this film fit in that work?
So when I did Stamp from the beginning, because it was Ibram Kendi and all of that, I really thought, because he was this great academician, that this was going to change policy and this was going to change hearts and minds. And it didn't. But when we're doing this film, I really feel that what you witness is so undeniable because it's police body cam footage. And so for me, we've tested it, we've shown it in many audiences, and many people of different political backgrounds. We've had maybe one or two people like asking us questions that were a little questionable, but everyone else really saw that that change has to be made. And so I really feel that the emotional feeling that people get away from this when they see this, take away from this, will maybe, hopefully, change hearts and minds.
Well, in some ways, it seems like showing it to audiences that, might not be on board with this are the most interesting audiences to reach with a film like this. And being on Netflix, and it can look from a trailer like other kinds of
true crime
thrillers.
True crime, which is internally.
I hear that's popular these days.
Yes. No offense. We love we wanted to get out to as many people in the audiences, and we think that the true crime title will probably get it to people that don't share the same political views.
I mean, can you elaborate a little bit more on your experiences in the last 10 months of showing it to audiences that, aren't the obvious audiences for it?
Yeah, I mean, you were just talking about the walls of government in the House of Government, and we just showed it in the Hamptons. And most of the people were much older and white, and they came up to us crying and shaking and wanting to make a change. We have a fund that our impact team put together, Standing in the Gap Fund, that's also with Ajika's mother. She founded it to help people that are affected by race-based violence, to make sure that other families don't have to go through not being able to find money for funeralizing someone, needing to get mental health services but not understanding where to do it. And in her case, she was getting a lot of death threats, and so she needed security, right? Just because she was trying to get her daughter's story and about her murder out there. And so audiences that don't look like me, most of the people who have seen it so far do not look like me, but they have been so open and receptive, and we're grateful for that.
Talk a little bit more about the mother of the victim, A.J. Owens, who A.J. Owens was a mother herself, but I had a chance to meet A.J.'s mother, who came to Copenhagen for a screening of CPH docs. Describe the presence and attitude she has.
Yeah. So I am a crybaby, everyone. And so every time I see her, I just bawl crying. But she is the most strong, brave person I've ever met. Her daughter, a mother of 4, and a very close, she's kind of young, so she had her when she was in college. So they've been best friends. She spoke to her daughter every day. Pamela Dias, her mother, decided that instead of what she says being selfish, which is not actually the right thing to say, she would decide on whether or not she should hold the grief or if she should turn it into purpose. And so she's been on the road turning it into purpose and talking about losing her daughter. And she had to leave her life in Georgia to come and take care of 4 children. She had just signed, just checked off one part of her bucket list after quitting a job in corporate America for a long time. She was going to be a flight attendant, and 6 months after she got a job as a flight attendant to travel the world, she got the call that she had to relocate from Georgia to Florida.
You talked about this fund that's been set up. You produced the film independently, brought it to Sundance, and that's where Netflix...
This is very, 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 very independent. What's below independent?
But you had a distinct philosophy going into Sundance about how you're going to handle it if a distributor came in and bought the film. Can you talk about that?
So many people that we all know have been coming up to us saying, "You're rich now." It's public how much we sold it to. But we really felt that the right thing to do was to make sure that we gave the lion's share of the money after all of the fees and all the investors had to be repaid, and we made some bad deals there too. We wanted to give the lion's share of the money to Pam, her mom, Ajika's mother, and we wanted to also give Standing in the Gap Fund some money as well, because it's the right thing to do. Oftentimes, thank you. Oftentimes, as you know, Tom, people as documentarians, we put people's trauma and their worst moments on air, in film and in series. And so we really wanted to make sure that there was some type of uplift in her life and in the kids' life. So they have, all 4 of them have college funds, and they bought a house.
How does this project, fit into the mission of Message Pictures, the company that you have with Sam Pollard and Geeta Ghanbir? I don't know how long ago it was that you started this.
3 years. We hard launched this year, as the young people would say. So Katrina Come Hell and High Water was our series #1 on Netflix for 5 days, and in the top 10 globally for 3 weeks. And then this, and we have other short films. How does it fit into our philosophy? The title says it all. Our films are about messages, and what we're trying to do is change the ecosphere around film. So the act of giving the money to Pam and the children was one part, but also trying to be really innovative about how we're telling the stories that have a message in it. So if you see it, when you see it, it is so immersive, as you know, Tom, and Katrina was as well, and so that's where we're coming from with all of our projects, including the message. Films, our big theory is that films that have a message don't have to be boring. I don't want to say it's entertaining, but you do know that this is very gripping.
And the messages that you're putting out are ones that are moving against political headwinds today. How are you experiencing that?
I'm still wrapping my head around it. Like I said, we just hard launched. I hope that it makes change, right? And when we did Stamped, it was all about trying to get policy change. And what I'm understanding now, and what I knew then, and what we talk about all the time in Message Pictures, is that this is our resistance to all of the crazy that's happening right now. And so we are pushing hard, because Tom, I'm no shrunken violet, so we're gonna push hard. May I leave you with a story about Ajika?
Please do.
So if Pamela was here, she would say that her daughter was so vibrant, she was lively, she was a mother, the mom, a mother of 4 children. She worked 2 jobs so they can go to private school. She was a football mom, she was a cheerleading mom. And because she was a single mom, she wanted more for herself. And so often she would call Pam, her mom, and tell her, I have this entrepreneurial exploit, I'm gonna do this or that. And she'd be like, yeah, whatever. And one of the last conversations that Pam and Ajika had, Ajika said, you watch, one day the world is gonna know my name. And so for this film is our effort to make sure that the world knows her name and knows what happened to her, and now you all are part of the legacy. And so we hope that you tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to watch on Netflix tonight at 3 a.m. New York Eastern Time.
Thank you very much for the film. Thanks to Alisa Payne.
Our final film in this episode is The Alabama Solution. In 2019, the filmmakers visited an Alabama prison to film a revival meeting. One of the prisoners whispered there was another story waiting to be told. The film team set out to expose what was happening inside by collecting phone footage from inmates. The directors are Andrew Jarecki, known for capturing the Freedmans and the Jinx, paired with Charlotte Kaufman, who was a producer on The Jinx Part 2 and on The Innocence Files. The Alabama Solution premiered at Sundance and is now streaming on HBO Max. Here's my conversation with the 2 directors.
So, Andrew and Charlotte, can you talk about the circumstances that got you into this? Your team was at this prison and then kind of got knowledge maybe there's another story to tell.
Well, I've made films in and around the justice system before, and I've been always concerned about, interested in incarceration and how it's done in this country and other countries. And about, 7 years ago, my daughter, who was at the time 14, was reading a book by Anthony Ray Hinton, who had been wrongfully convicted in Alabama. And she said, I know you're interested in this stuff. Let's read this. So we read it together, and it was really disturbing, and we decided to take a road trip. So we went to Alabama, went to Montgomery, and we were lucky enough to meet somebody who had unique knowledge of the system, and said, if you're interested, maybe you should come into the prison. And I said, well, we're filmmakers, and prisons are like black sites. They don't want journalists in there. And he said, well, the Lord works in mysterious ways. You might be able to find your way, and, you could volunteer. And I said, what would we see? And he said, well, if you go into Holman Prison and you go on the death row, you'll see it's a slave ship. And that really stayed with me. And then I went back to New York, and Charlotte and I decided to go down and volunteer, and then that's sort of what you see in the film. That was kind of our way in, and it was very clear that when we went into the prison, the vast majority of what was happening in the prison was not something we were allowed to see. So there were a lot of areas where we were not allowed to go, and when we did start to go there, we were told that it was time to stop filming.
So, Charlotte, once you kind of set up a system to be getting footage out of the prison, can you talk about how that system worked?
Well, cell phones have been present inside Alabama's prisons since about 2013, and there have been brave men, some who you get to meet in the film, but many others who we've spoke to and built relationships with that have been using the tools to get past the secrecy that shrouds all of America's prisons to document their existence and try to get it out into the world in whatever way possible. So we did not have to set up a system. This was a project. This was something that people have been doing for some time in Alabama's prisons. And after our initial visit to Easterling Prison, men started reaching out to us, men that we had met, and started telling us more about the conditions and the reality under which they live. And they also said, there are some people that you really need to speak to, some brilliant leaders and thinkers and philosophers in here. And so through a network of just conversations and being able to speak to people, we were led to the central leaders that you meet in the film. And then over 6 years, just engaged in very in-depth dialogue with them.
So, Andrew, I remember when this premiered at Sundance in January, it was a late announcement at Sundance, which I took to be an effort to kind of maintain some secrecy around the project up to the last minute. Can you talk about the need for that secrecy at the time, and then what it meant to bring the project to the world?
Yeah, thank you for noticing that. We were done with the film, and the film had always been made sort of in secret, because what the men are doing inside, the fact that they have access to cell phones is sort of mind-blowing. And Alabama's prison system is essentially a criminal enterprise. The criminality is coming largely from the officers who are in charge of selling the drugs. The officers are the ones who bring in the cell phones. And it's ironic that the prison is always saying, we're doing everything we can to defeat the cell phones. And meantime, it's very clear where the phones are coming from. And I've talked to people who, I've said, well, how are there so many drugs? How is it possible? 85% of the population is on drugs in a prison where they're supposed to be kept safe. Where are the drugs coming from? Where are the phones coming from? And, the person I was talking to as a prisoner looked at me like sort of incredulously, and he said, we don't leave, right? And it really, made us understand that we were getting this window, this very unique window into a system which is essentially a murder factory run by the state. It's enormously profitable. There's $450 million in free labor that the state gets from the work of these men. And the leaders who are inside have been running sort of a nonviolent protest movement for many years now, just trying to get the word out. And it's kind of ironic that the way that, as you'll see in the film, that the response from the administration is always violent, that they're always trying to harm these men. And so we worry a lot about the men because they've been at risk. They've been at risk for years and have actually, been subject to very specific retaliation because they're so smart, because they're so organized, because they're able to run a multi-prison work strike, that's completely constructed through cell phones and notes, and they're able to do this across the entire state. I mean, they're just like the greatest labor organizers in the world. And, the reaction to that is like, I think we got to kill these guys. And they've tried to. They keep trying to. So just to make one other point, we've tried to be very active in thinking about their safety. They're very clear that they want this message out. They've said to us many times, we're more worried about what happens if the cameras go off, because they understand they're so isolated there. But we've also kind of encouraged the creation of a defense committee for them. And so the prison is, in Alabama, the Department of Corrections is very aware that these men are in the film, and they're very aware that a lot of people are watching, and we're hoping that a lot of people here who see the film are people that, ultimately if retaliation is attempted, which so far has been avoided, we think there'll be a loud voice of people saying, I got to know those guys, and I don't think that they ought to be targeted by the organization.
One other thing leading to your question about leading up to Sundance was it was really important that everyone in the film was able to see it ahead of when the public
that
gets
work?
to see. Well, I'll leave it to the imagination, but because contact with them is not always dependable, and you can't just call up and say, well, let's make an appointment, that took some time to make sure everyone had the chance to review what would be covered in the film, because the stakes are so high. And that also includes the family members on the outside who we followed. So we just needed that extra time to make sure that, as a collective, everyone was ready.
I want to ask about one of those family members, Sandra Ray, whose son was killed in prison. She's a very compelling figure in this film. Can you talk about the choice to incorporate her into the story?
I think, we approached going down to Alabama and trying to understand these systemic failures with an open mind, and we were going to document what came up and what happened and just lead with investigation. And it, happened that Melvin Ray sent us a text message that someone had been beaten, and we went to the hospital, and by the time we got there, unfortunately, he had passed away. And we went straight from there. We looked, through searches, we found the parents, and we said we have to go actually speak to the parents, because unfortunately in Alabama, when people die in the facilities, they often don't tell the families. Or they'll tell them many weeks later, after it's too late to request any information, or that could help them try to get to the truth. And so we wanted to go try to speak with the family. And we went and we knocked on Sandy Ray's door. This is the day that, just hours later, before, she was holding her son's hand dying, as he was dying, and she welcomed us in because she could tell that she was being denied the truth. And she wasn't getting answers or respect or help from the authorities. And then we were, had the mutual goal of wanting to understand what actually happened. And she invited us in, and she let us stay in her home for 2 weeks, basically, and be there embedded. I slept on a couch with a camera and just ready to film things as it happens. And I think that's really important, because I think what the families go through, not knowing what's happening to their loved ones and the way the system is able to disappear people, it cannot be translated, the horror of it, unless you're in the situation with the parent. So thank goodness she had the resilience and the vision to let us in.
Yeah, I think it was amazing just going to her house. We didn't really know what the situation was. Her son was clearly not going to come back to life. She was with him, and then she had been told by the officers who were there, who were kind of like stationed in the hospital, and the officers in a way like kind of take control over what's happening in the hospital. And there's no law that allows them to do that. They just kind of do that. And so she had said at one point after being with him for the entire night, look, my son's not coming back, and he's obviously in severe distress. I think we have to take him off life support. And they said, unfortunately, that's not your choice because he's a ward of the state. We're going to have to call the warden. So it took them some time to locate the warden, and then finally the warden gave permission for her to have her son taken off life support. A few hours later, Charlotte and I show up in her, on her porch, and she has the presence of mind to say, they're lying to me right now. I don't want this to happen to anyone else. You help me record show me how to record calls on my phone. I've already gotten calls from the warden, from the people in the prison. They're all telling me stories that aren't true. Let's capture that. So she's kind of just an incredible human being. And by the way, she's like on oxygen, and she's like she's sort of like the center of her whole family, and and she's had her son has been in prison for a very long time, especially considering. So he was there on kind of a felony murder charge because he was a drug user. He was in the car with a friend of his. The friend went to buy drugs. The drug dealer got shot. He was in the car. He never pulled the trigger. And yet here he is dying in a Alabama prison camp.
So in the minute we have left, now that the film has been making its way in the festival circuit and will be coming to HBO Max, or is it already HBO Max? Or
It's just now.
Last week, right? Have you gotten any reaction from state officials in Alabama who could do something about this?
Well, I believe they've given one sort of official response, which is, we see some of the uniforms in the footage are the white uniforms, which we used to use in 2019, and now we use the brown uniform. So we don't know if this footage is real or if we can't verify this. That's what we've heard some of the response through the grapevine. And what I would say to that is, in addition to all of the horrible things that happen that we investigate deeply in the film, we've also investigated all of the people who have died in Alabama's prison system. And there have been over 1,300 people since 2019. And during that time, the death rate has doubled while we were making this film. So if they want to say, that's old news, we figured it out, we fixed it, look at it's white uniforms in maybe 3 of the videos, our response is no, the crisis has only multiplied, look at this data. And we think hopefully the emotion of the film, combined with the scope of our investigation and the facts and many and all the family members who are motivated, is going to force the conversation in Alabama. And I think there is a movement growing. And it's, by the way, this is not just Alabama. This is across America. Across America, you have institutions that are secret, where there is complete authoritarian power over one group of people. And when that happens, the same type of abuses and cover-up and harm will flourish. The only difference is you can see it in Alabama. And because of the brave
and maybe won't
men.
be able to do it for very long, because just in the last few days, I think the film has made an impression in government circles, certainly in Alabama, and they had never made a real effort to block the cell phone signals. And then just a few days ago, Brendan Carr came out and said, we're changing the FCC rule, so now we can block cell phone signals. So they're putting in all kinds of expensive equipment now. But as kinetic justice, as Robert Earl Counsell says in the film, they concentrate on the phones, not the incidents that are recorded with the phones.
And just one note about the blocking of the cell phones. This is something that they have been trying to do for a really long time, and it's a little chilling it's happening now, because it's not just carceral, it's not just prisons, it's also immigration sites. It's also all these other places where we're taking people and there is no way to access or to see inside. So I
But
think
I think the great power of filmmaking, and there's so many people here that do this, is that, we have the ability to get the word out on these secret places, and it's not a surprise that it's very high on their priority list to shut that down.
Well, now you can watch it on HBO Max. Thank you very much to Andrew Jarecki and Charlotte Kaufman.
I want to thank all of our guests. You can watch The Alabama Solution on HBO Max and The Perfect Neighbor on Netflix. Look out for Come See Me in the Good Light, coming to Apple TV on November 14th, and The Age of Disclosure, coming to theaters and VOD on November 21st. Thanks to the Ankler team, including Janice Min, London Sanders, and Hannah Hensler. If you need a holiday gift for a film lover, including yourself, look up my new book, Mondo Documentary. Nelson George says it's like a giant wish list of films you can't wait to see. You can order it anywhere in the world from purenonfiction.net, but not on Amazon. Thanks to our team, Doc Voices writer Bella Racklin, series producer Hannah Nordenswan, and web designer Cross Strategy. Our theme music is composed by Andre Williams, and our executive producer is Raphael Nehausen. I'm Tom Powers. Follow us on Instagram and visit our website at purenonfiction.net.